The invitation came 15 years after Baghdad. Having a reunion for old crew. Would mean a lot if you came. Chief Warrant Officer Jake Morrison. Jake Morrison. The best helicopter pilot I'd ever flown with. The man who'd gotten our squad out of countless hot zones in Iraq. The friend who disappeared from my life after our deployment ended, cutting off all contact, leaving me wondering what I'd done to lose his friendship. And now, out of nowhere, an invitation to reconnect. The reunion was at a rooftop bar downtown. When I arrived, I saw Jake standing at the railing looking out over the city. 15 years had aged him, more gray in his hair, deeper lines in his face, a weariness that hadn't been there when we'd served together. "Marcus," he said, turning as I approached. His handshake was firm, but his smile didn't reach his eyes. "Thanks for coming. Wasn't sure you would after." I kept my tone light, but the hurt was real. "What happened, Jake? We were tight in Iraq, then you came home and just disappeared." Jake gestured to a corner table, away from the other patrons. "That's what I need to talk to you about. That's why I asked you here. There's something I need to tell you. Something I should have told you 15 years ago but couldn't. Something about why I cut you off." We sat down, ordered beers. Jake stared at his bottle without drinking, his jaw working like he was trying to force words out. "You remember June 17th, 2008? He finally asked. I did. One of the worst days of our deployment. An ambush in Baghdad that had gone sideways. Multiple casualties, chaos and confusion. The day we'd lost Thompson and Rodriguez. I remember, we got hit hard, lost 2 guys. You flew in and extracted us under heavy fire. You saved the rest of us." "That's the official story," Jake said quietly. "That's what the after-action report says, that I evacuated survivors under fire, that Thompson and Rodriguez were KIA from the ambush, that it was a tragic but unavoidable combat loss." Something in his tone made my blood run cold. "What's the real story?" Jake took a long drink of his beer, then pulled out a worn notebook from his jacket pocket. "I've been carrying this for 15 years. Written account of what really happened that day. I've been trying to work up the courage to tell someone, to finally unburden myself of this secret. And you deserve to know because you were there. Because the official story affects how you remember your friends who died." "Jake, what are you saying?" He opened the notebook but didn't read from it, just held it like a talisman. "June 17th, 2008. Your squad was on patrol in Sadr City. I was on standby at FOB Shield, ready to provide air support if needed. At 14:30 hours we got the call. Your squad was in contact, taking heavy fire, requesting immediate evac for wounded. I remembered. The patrol had started routine, checking on local markets, talking to shop owners, building relationships. Then the shooting started from multiple directions. An organized ambush. I spun up immediately," Jake continued. "My crew chief was Sergeant Danny Cole. Door gunner was Specialist Lisa Chen. We were airborne in 3 minutes, heading to your coordinates. When we arrived at the LZ, the situation was worse than reported. You weren't just taking fire, you were pinned down. The ambush was well coordinated, multiple shooters on rooftops, RPGs, heavy machine guns, and your squad was in the open, trying to get to cover while carrying wounded. I could see Thompson and Rodriguez. They were down in the street. Thompson was still moving, trying to drag himself toward cover. Rodriguez wasn't moving at all, hit in the head, probably dead instantly. The rest of you were returning fire, trying to create enough suppression for me to land and extract." Jake's hands were shaking now, beer forgotten. I made my approach, started descending to the LZ, and that's when I got new orders over the radio. Direct from battalion command. They said the LZ was too hot, said I was to abort the extraction, said it was too dangerous to risk a helicopter and crew for a patrol that was already catastrophically compromised. My stomach dropped. "They ordered you to leave us there. They ordered me to abort, to pull back and wait for the situation to stabilize. They said ground reinforcements were en route, that I should maintain overwatch position and provide covering fire but not land. What did you do?" "I followed orders. I aborted the approach. I pulled up and moved to overwatch position." His voice cracked. "And I watched Thompson die in that street. Watched him bleed out because I didn't land and extract him when I had the chance." The revelation hit me like a physical blow. "Thompson was alive when you first arrived? He could have been saved?" "Maybe. Probably. He'd been hit in the leg, femoral artery most likely. Massive blood loss but potentially survivable if we'd gotten him medical attention quickly. But I followed orders to abort the extraction. And by the time ground reinforcements arrived 20 minutes later, Thompson was dead from blood loss." Jake was crying now, tears running down his weathered face. "I could have saved him, Marcus. I could have ignored orders, landed that bird, gotten him and Rodriguez's body out. Yeah, it would have been dangerous. Yeah, I might have taken fire, but I've made worse landings under worse conditions. I could have done it, but you followed orders." "But I followed orders, and Thompson died. And I've been carrying that for 15 years. The knowledge that I prioritized following orders over saving your friend's life." I sat there trying to process this. Thompson's death had been presented as inevitable. Catastrophic wounds, died instantly or near instantly from the ambush. Nobody had ever suggested he might have survived if the medevac had landed when first called. Did anyone else know about this? About the abort order? My crew knew. Cole and Chen heard the order and my response. They saw me pull up instead of landing, and they saw Thompson die while we circled overhead providing covering fire that accomplished fuck all. After the mission, Battalion called us in. Said the extraction had been successful given the circumstances. Said Thompson and Rodriguez were KIA from the ambush, which was true, just not complete truth. They didn't mention the abort order. Didn't mention that I could have landed earlier. Just filed it as a routine combat loss. And your crew? Cole didn't say anything officially, but he never looked at me the same way again. Requested transfer to a different unit 2 months later. Chen went along with the story publicly, but she wrote me a letter after we got home. Said she understood why I'd followed orders, but that she couldn't reconcile serving with someone who'd prioritize orders over lives. Haven't heard from her since. Jake drained his beer and immediately ordered another. The worst part? Battalion was probably right. The LZ was hot as hell. There was a real risk I'd get shot down trying to land. If that happened, my crew and I would have died, the helicopter would have been destroyed, and your squad still wouldn't have been evacuated. So from a tactical standpoint, the abort order made sense. But from a human standpoint, I let your friend die. I had the ability to try to save him and I chose not to because a voice on the radio told me not to. And I have to live with that choice every single day. I was struggling to form coherent thoughts. Thompson had been my friend. We'd enlisted together, deployed together. His death had devastated his family. His parents had been told he died a hero, killed in action during an ambush. Nothing anyone could have done. Now I was learning he might have survived if the helicopter pilot had disobeyed orders. Why are you telling me this now? After 15 years? Jake looked at me with hollow eyes. Because I'm tired of carrying it alone. Because Cole killed himself 3 years ago, drove into a tree at high speed, no attempt to brake. His wife found a note saying he couldn't live with the things he'd seen, the decisions he'd failed to make. And I know he was thinking about Thompson when he wrote that. Because Chen sent me a message last month. Said she's been diagnosed with terminal cancer, has maybe 6 months left. And she said before she dies, someone needs to tell the truth about what happened. Someone needs to acknowledge that Thompson might have survived if we'd had the courage to disobey orders. And because I can't do this anymore, can't keep pretending I'm fine, can't keep going to veteran events and accepting thanks for my service when I know I failed in the most fundamental way, I chose orders over lives. You were following commands from your superiors, in a combat zone. That's what soldiers are supposed to do. Is it? Jake challenged. Is that always what we're supposed to do? Or are there moments when the right thing is to disobey? When following orders is actually the coward's choice? I thought about that. About the moral calculus of combat. About the impossible decisions people face when lives hang in the balance. What did you want to happen by telling me this? I don't know. Maybe I wanted someone who knew Thompson to know the truth about how he died. Maybe I just needed to tell someone before the secret killed me like it killed Cole. Jake pulled out a photograph our crew and squad together before a mission. Thompson was in it, young and smiling. No idea he had months to live. I think about him every day. Wonder if he knew help was right there overhead. Wonder if he understood why the helicopter pulled away instead of landing. Wonder if his last thoughts were confusion about why we abandoned him. We didn't abandon you, I said, the words sounding hollow even as I spoke them. We stayed on station, provided covering fire, helped ground reinforcements navigate to your position. We didn't just leave, but you didn't land. You didn't do the one thing that might have saved Thompson's life. No, Jake admitted. We didn't. And I've spent 15 years trying to justify that decision and failing. He opened his notebook again, showed me pages of handwritten anguish. Dates, times, analysis of the tactical situation, calculations about whether he could have landed successfully, self-recriminations about following orders instead of following conscience. I've played it out thousands of times. Different approaches, different landing zones, different responses to the abort order. In some scenarios, I land successfully and extract Thompson and he survives. In others, I get shot down and everyone dies. I'll never know which would have actually happened because I followed orders instead of trying. What does Battalion say? Did you ever confront them about the abort order? The officer who gave that order retired 5 years ago, lives in Arizona. I've thought about contacting him, asking him to justify that decision. But what's the point? He made a command decision based on the information available. Tactically, he was probably right. We just happened to pay for that tactical correctness with Thompson's life. I sat there absorbing all this, trying to reconcile the Jake I'd known, brave, decisive, willing to fly into hell to extract soldiers, with this version who'd followed an order to abort an extraction. Did you try to argue? When you got the abort order, did you push back? I questioned it. Said I thought I could make the landing work. But battalion was firm, too risky, abort the approach, maintain overwatch. And I was a warrant officer. They were field-grade officers with the full tactical picture. What was I supposed to do? Disobey a direct order based on my gut feeling? Maybe, if your gut feeling could have saved Thompson, and if I was wrong, if I disobeyed and gotten shot down, how many more would have died because I prioritized one wounded soldier over tactical prudence? It was an impossible question with no good answer. Let me ask you something, I said. If you could go back, knowing what you know now, would you disobey that order? Would you land anyway? Jake was quiet for a long time, staring at Thompson's photo. I want to say yes. Want to believe I'd have the courage to disobey. But honestly, I don't know. Because disobeying orders in combat has consequences. It's not heroism if you're wrong, it's recklessness that gets people killed. And I don't know if I'd have the certainty in that moment to make that call. But you live with the certainty that following orders cost Thompson his life. Yes, and that certainty is unbearable. Which is why I'm telling you, why I'm finally breaking my silence, because carrying this alone is killing me. Over the next hours, Jake told me everything he remembered about that day. The exact wording of the abort order, his internal debate about whether to follow it, the sight of Thompson in the street, still moving, still alive, the moment when the ground reinforcements finally arrived and Thompson had already bled out. There's something else you need to know, Jake said as the sky darkened completely, something I've never told anyone. What? After we returned to base, after the official debrief, the officer who'd given the abort order pulled me aside, thanked me for following orders under difficult circumstances, said I'd made the right tactical decision even though it had a tragic outcome. Then he said something that's haunted me ever since. He said sometimes we have to sacrifice the individual to preserve the unit. That's the burden of command. And you showed real maturity by understanding that. Jake's voice was bitter now. He was praising me for letting Thompson die, calling it maturity, acting like choosing to follow orders over trying to save a life was some kind of wisdom instead of cowardice, and I wanted to punch him, wanted to scream that Thompson wasn't an abstract tactical consideration, but a human being who died while I watched. But I didn't. I just nodded and accepted his praise, and filed away my guilt to deal with later. Except I never dealt with it, just buried it deeper and deeper until it started destroying me from the inside. Is that why you cut contact with me, with everyone from the deployment? Yeah, because every time I saw someone from that deployment, I saw Thompson, saw the choice I made, saw my cowardice dressed up as following orders. It was easier to disappear than to face what I'd done. So what now? Why tell me this after 15 years of silence? Jake pulled out a letter from his notebook. This is from Chen, the one with terminal cancer. She wrote it 3 weeks ago. He handed it to me. I read it in the dim light from the string lights overhead. The letter was devastating. Chen wrote about carrying the memory of Thompson dying in the street, about watching Jake abort the landing and feeling powerless to change his decision, about years of nightmares and guilt, and wondering if they'd murdered Thompson through inaction. And she wrote about her diagnosis, about having months to live, about deciding that she couldn't die carrying this secret, that someone needed to tell the truth about what happened. She'd asked Jake to find me, to tell me the truth, to finally acknowledge that Thompson's death wasn't the clean combat loss it had been reported as. She's dying, Jake said simply, and she wants someone to know the truth before she goes, someone who knew Thompson, someone who can decide what to do with that truth. What am I supposed to do with it? I don't know. Tell Thompson's family? Demand an investigation? Expose the whole thing? Or just carry it like I've been carrying it? Chen left it up to us to decide. But she was clear. The truth needs to be told, even if it's told quietly. I thought about Thompson's parents. They were in their 70s now. Their son had been dead for 15 years. They'd mourned him as a hero who died in combat. What would it do to them to learn he might have survived if the helicopter had landed? That he bled out in the street while the medevac circled overhead following orders? His parents deserve to know the truth, I said, though the words felt inadequate. Do they? What does the truth give them except more pain? Thompson is still dead. Knowing he might have been saved doesn't change that. It just adds layers of anger and betrayal to their grief. But isn't truth better than a comfortable lie? I used to think so. Now I'm not sure. Sometimes the truth just hurts people without helping anyone. We ordered more beers, sat in silence watching the city lights twinkle below us. Two veterans wrestling with an impossible decision about an old tragedy. Chen asked me to do one more thing, Jake said eventually. She asked me to find a record of the abort order, proof that it happened. So if we decide to tell Thompson's family, we have documentation beyond just our word. And I found it, buried in archived radio logs from that day. Clear recording of battalion ordering me to abort the extraction due to hostile fire. Clear recording of me acknowledging and complying with that order. He pulled out a small device from his pocket. I have it right here. Audio proof of what happened. Proof that Thompson might have survived if I'd disobeyed. or proof that you followed proper protocol in a combat situation. Depends on who's listening and what they want to believe. Jake put the device on the table between us. So here we are, 15 years later, with proof of what happened, with Chen dying, and Cole dead, and Thompson long dead. And we have to decide, do we tell the truth, expose the abort order, let Thompson's family know he might have been saved, or do we let the comfortable lie stand? I picked up the device, held it in my hand, such a small thing to contain such a devastating truth. If we expose this, it destroys more than just you. It destroys the officer who gave the abort order. It destroys the battalion's reputation. It raises questions about how many other extraction requests were denied for tactical reasons. I know, this isn't just about Thompson. It's about the whole system of command decisions in combat, about whether we prioritize individual lives or tactical considerations, about whether following orders is always right or sometimes cowardly. And if we stay silent, Chen dies carrying the secret. I keep carrying it. You now carry it too. And Thompson's family never knows that their son might have survived if different decisions had been made. I thought about Thompson, about his laugh, his stories, his dreams of opening a restaurant when he got home. All of it ended in a Baghdad street, while a helicopter circled overhead following orders. I need to think about this, need to consider all the implications before making a decision. That's more than I did 15 years ago. I just followed orders without thinking through the implications. We sat for another hour, talking through the options, the arguments for exposing the truth, accountability, honesty, giving Thompson's family complete information, the arguments for staying silent, mercy, avoiding pain that can't accomplish anything constructive, protecting people from knowledge that will only hurt them. Neither option felt right. Both had massive costs. Chen said something in her letter. Jake said as we were preparing to leave. She said the truth is like a cancer. If you cut it out, the surgery hurts. If you leave it in, it kills you slowly. Either way, there's pain. The question is whether you want quick pain that might heal, or slow pain that definitely destroys. Poetic for someone actually dying of cancer. She was always more thoughtful than me or Cole. We were just pilots. She was someone who actually considered the moral dimensions of what we did. I stood to leave, the weight of this new knowledge sitting heavy on my shoulders. What are you going to do? Jake asked. I don't know yet, but I promise I'll decide. I'll think about it seriously and make a conscious choice rather than just avoiding it. That's all Chen asked for, a conscious choice instead of cowardice by inaction. I drove home with my mind churning, thought about Thompson's parents, now elderly, carrying their grief for 15 years, thought about Jake, carrying impossible guilt, thought about Chen, dying and wanting the truth told, thought about Cole, dead by his own hand, unable to live with what he'd witnessed. Over the next weeks I wrestled with the decision. I researched the officer who'd given the abort order, found that he'd retired honorably, was living a comfortable life, probably never thought about Thompson anymore. I looked up Thompson's family. His parents were still alive, still had his photos up, still mourned their son, the hero who died serving his country. And I thought about what the truth would give them versus what it would take away. In the end, I made my decision. I contacted Chen, told her I'd heard the story from Jake, asked her what she really wanted from all this. I want Thompson to be remembered accurately, she said, her voice weak from illness. Not as someone who died instantly in an ambush, but as someone who bled out while we followed orders not to help him. I want the truth to exist somewhere, acknowledged, even if it's not publicly exposed. What about his family? I don't know. Part of me says they deserve to know. Part of me says telling them accomplishes nothing except causing pain. I guess I want someone to decide who isn't dying and isn't carrying my specific guilt. Someone who can make a choice based on what's right, rather than what eases my conscience. So I made the choice. I documented everything. Jake's confession, the audio recording of the abort order, Chen's letter, my own testimony about Thompson as a person. I compiled it into a sealed file with instructions that it be opened only in specific circumstances. If Thompson's family specifically requested information about his death, if there was an official investigation into the incident, or in 2033, 25 years after his death, when everyone directly involved would likely be dead or very old. I sent copies to the National Archives, to military historians, and to a lawyer with instructions to handle it according to my specifications. Then I met with Thompson's parents. I didn't tell them about the abort order, didn't tell them their son might have survived. Instead, I told them I'd served with their son, that he'd been brave and good and had died trying to help his squad. I told them Jake Morrison had been the pilot who tried to extract them that day, that Jake had risked his life flying into heavy fire, that their son had died knowing his brothers were trying to save him. It wasn't the whole truth, but it was a truth that gave them comfort without destroying them with knowledge that couldn't help. Thompson's mother cried and thanked me for coming, said it meant a lot to know her son had been surrounded by people who cared about him. Chen died 2 months later. I visited her before the end, told her what I'd decided to do with the information. You're preserving the truth but protecting the living, she said. That's probably wise. Wiser than I would have been. I would have wanted to burn it all down, expose everything. But maybe that's the cancer talking, making me want to destroy things before I go. Do you think I made the right choice? I think there is no right choice. Just different wrong choices with different costs. You chose the one that seemed least harmful. That's all anyone can do with impossible decisions. She died peacefully, her conscience eased by knowing the truth had been documented even if it wasn't exposed. Jake and I stay in touch now, meet occasionally. Don't talk much about Thompson or that day in Baghdad. But the knowledge sits between us. Acknowledged, no longer a secret but not exactly public either. The abort order exists in sealed archives. The truth is preserved. Thompson's family has comfort. Jake lives with his guilt, but knows it's been witnessed and acknowledged. Is it justice? No. Justice would have been Jake landing that helicopter and saving Thompson, or the officer never giving the abort order, or Thompson never being in that ambush in the first place. But it's truth, preserved with care for the living. It's acknowledgement without destruction. It's the best we could manage with an impossible situation, and sometimes that has to be enough. In 2033, the archives will open. Future historians will learn about the abort order and Thompson's death. They'll judge whether Jake made the right call, whether the officer made the right call, whether following orders was justified or cowardly. But by then, we'll all be gone or too old to care. The truth will exist, but it won't hurt us anymore. And maybe that's the best we can hope for with terrible truths from terrible times. Not perfect justice, not complete exposure, just careful preservation until the truth can be told without destroying the people it touches. Jake asked me once if I thought Thompson would have wanted the truth exposed. I thought about my friend, irreverent, funny, always pushing boundaries, and I thought he probably would have wanted the truth told completely, immediately. Damn the consequences. But Thompson didn't have to live with the consequences. He died in that street. The rest of us had to figure out how to live with what happened. And we're doing the best we can, carrying the truth carefully, preserving it without weaponizing it, acknowledging guilt without making it destroy everyone involved. It's not perfect, but in war, nothing ever is.